Hello, Dookie03 here, and welcome to another quick review. Today we're going to be doing an off-the-cuff review of Breath of Fire 3 for the PlayStation 1. This is a game that has been recommended to me by many people. I played Breath of Fire 1 a couple years ago. You can find my review on the channel. It was definitely fairly subpar compared to what I would expect from a Super NES game, considering that Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy 4 and 6 were both on the Super NES and are absolutely amazing. Breath of Fire 3 unfortunately suffers from a lot of the same stuff. It feels dated. It feels like you're playing an early Super NES game, but it's on the PS1, which is kind of weird. It's not a bad game, but it's not as great as I was expecting it to be from what I had heard from other people. So basically in Breath of Fire 3, you start out as a little baby dragon in a mine shaft, killing a bunch of the miners and not really knowing what you're doing. The people are all afraid of you and you're not sure why. You're just kind of like tossed in there, which kind of makes sense as far as the narrative goes. You kind of like gain sentience, it feels like, all of a sudden at this moment. And then as you escape, you end up getting hurt. You end up turning into a human, your human form after you get captured. Shit goes down. You end up meeting up with a couple of outcasts named Ray and Tipo, and they basically become your new family. One thing that this game suffers from is really a lack of story. It's not like there's no story, but it's got a skeleton story, and when it comes to JRPGs, to me anyway, story is like king. You need to have a great story to keep me pressing forward through the game. But this game's story was fairly lackluster. It was there, but it was just barely there. It's not a bad story, it's the fact that there's barely a story. Its strongest points, I would say, are the combat and the characters. The characters are very likable, especially Ray. Ray is by far my favorite Breath of Fire character now. He's just got such a great sense of humor, but he's also feels like he should be taking care of a lot of the others in the group, because he kind of takes you in under his wing, and then shit goes down while he feels like he's supposed to be taking care of you. He probably also has the most character development in the entire game, even though he's missing for a large part of it, which also tells you kind of how barely there the story is. I mean, Ray has the most character development, and he's not there for like a massive chunk of the game. I also loved Gar. Gar is like this guardian of the gods. He's sent to kill the brood, or the dragons that still remain. But as you go on your journey, you find out that everything that he was told was basically a lie, and you got to get to the bottom of what his purpose was, as well as what Ryu, the main character's purpose, and the brood's history exactly is all about. There are some cool story spots, but a lot of it is halted by what I like to call brick walls in games. And the biggest brick wall in this game is getting the ship. I feel like over half the game, and this is like a 40+ hour game, half the game is you trying to get a ship. And you get to the ship town, and they're like, hey, we got a ship, talk to my daughter, she'll get you set up with the ship. You talk to the daughter, she does not get you set up with the ship. You have to train her boyfriend thing to not be a pussy, and you train him, and then you go to the lighthouse, and then you're like, yes, I went to the lighthouse, now I can get the ship. And they're like, oh, sorry, I know you went to the lighthouse, but you still can't have the ship. We just don't happen to have a ship right now. You end up finding another route around the sea that you needed the ship for. Why we didn't go here in the first place, I have no idea. This is the story just setting up brick walls, dragging on forever. The best part of the game is actually, in my opinion, when you go through the lava cave. There's this grinding exploit that was incredible. I love to grind, and that's probably the most fun I had in this game, was just grinding, because the combat system is really good. That's one thing I will say. This game has a tight combat system. There's some cool abilities. You can basically learn enemy skills with anyone at any time. Speaking of enemy skills, this game has what's called the Master System, which means you train under Masters to learn their abilities. So as you level up, you gain like specific abilities that they will teach you when you go back to them. The problem is, this game does not explain anything about how the Master System works. It doesn't explain who the Masters are, how you learn the abilities, what abilities you can learn. All it'll tell you is what stats will increase as you level up. It doesn't tell you if you have to come back to these guys to get your skills, which you do, but it doesn't tell you how often, so you're constantly just going back and forth after grinding to check if you've learned any abilities, and half the time you haven't. Another crappy thing is once you've learned the abilities from a master, no other characters can learn those abilities from that master. So for example, there's an old wizard guy near the beginning of the game. I had Nina learn all his skills, and then I tried to get Momo to go under him, and no, you can't learn the skills twice. But you can get these things called, I think, Skill Ink, and that allows you to transfer the skill to somebody else, but basically no characters can have the same skills. Back to the whole ship thing, there's actually a time skip in the game where Ryu goes from being a child to waking up in another mine shaft as an adult, then being found by Gar. That part was pretty damn cool, but the problem is, once you kind of get the party back together again as adults, it's super cool to see all your party members grown up, but then once again, you have to try to get the ship, and you spend another, like, 3 to 4 hours trying to get this fucking ship. It's probably more than 3 to 4 hours, because you try to get it in the ship town, and then you go all the way around through the lava cave area again. You go to, like, this junk town. They say they can repair the ship, but you need to find all these items and play these shitty minigames. That's the other thing. The minigames in this game are mostly awful. It's not that the minigames concepts are bad, it's that the controls don't really work for them. So you end up replaying the same minigame like 40 times, and you're not doing anything wrong. The game's just like not detecting your inputs properly or something like that. It's super weird. I don't know why they would put that in there. If the controls weren't gonna work for the minigame, just take the goddamn minigame out. Just let the plot progress, goddammit. Anyways, after hours and hours, you finally get the ship, only to find out immediately that you need a different ship. This ship is not good enough for what you need to do. You need to cross, I think it's called like the middle sea. It's like the sea separating the two main continents, and you can't cross it with this ship. You need a bigger ship. And then you spend another like 2 to 3 hours trying to get this bigger ship. And it's not exciting. The dungeons are riddled with mazes and puzzles, and it's just drags on, man. The first half of the game, I want to say, was pretty damn good. I really liked it. There was a lot of character interaction and just fun spots like that. Simple little puzzles and mazes, but the whole last half of the game, when you're just trying to get a ship so you can get a ship, so you can get across the sea, is absolutely abysmal. It just drags on forever. I haven't even talked about the desert, which is like the part most people hate. Thankfully, I had a guy in chat, Tezzeret, I believe his name is. Sorry if I got that wrong. He told me a shortcut to get through the desert, so it wasn't too bad for me, but I've heard nothing but bad things about this desert. Honestly, the game to me was a huge letdown, but the fishing minigame was fucking incredible. Possibly one of the best fishing minigames I've ever played in a JRPG. I do plan on doing a top 10 fishing minigames video at some point, probably after I finish playing Breath of Fire 4, which I will get to hopefully sometime this year. Hopefully it's better than this one. Honestly, Breath of Fire 3, not a terrible game, but I would have to give it something like a 6.5 out of 10. Looking back at Breath of Fire 1, I know in my review I think I gave it a 7 out of 10. I think, honestly, looking back at Breath of Fire 1, I would have to give it something more around a 5 out of 10. It's a passable game, but it is not very good as far as JRPGs go, especially on the Super NES. I'm told these games aren't really known for having great stories, to which I say, why make a JRPG at all if you're not going to have at least a decent story that's carried on throughout the game? Anyways, I hope I didn't come off too negative. I'm just super disappointed because I had people telling me this was like their favorite game of all time and that I needed to play it, and it was a huge letdown for me. So like I said at the beginning, not a terrible game by any means, but just a huge letdown, and it could have been so much better. I'm hoping Breath of Fire 4 is a lot better than this one. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this quick review of Breath of Fire 3. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.